Is blindness a barrier? No.
Is deafness a barrier? No.
Are mobility, learning, cognitive disabilities, speech impairments and others, or even a combination of them, barriers? No way. Lack of accessibility is.
Welcome to Web Accessibility for All.
Follow the blind. This journey starts now.
Hey my friend, welcome back to Web Accessibility for All. I am Ariel, Accessibility Consultant, Front-End Engineer, and your host. And today we are taking a closer look at something deceptively simple: breadcrumbs.
What? Breadcrumbs? Are we back on 2005?
We've treated breadcrumbs like a solved problem, but it's time to bring them back to the discussion and rethink how they behave under pressure. Let's hear from two real users: Marcela, low vision user using iOS Zoom, and Daniel, screen reader user on Android.
I really have to zoom in when I shop online, sometimes to 200% or more. Breadcrumbs are usually a big help for knowing where I am, but on my phone, they're always getting cut off.
Sometimes I'll be on an e-commerce site where you can scroll through the breadcrumbs just by touching them. But if I'm using TalkBack, I can't swipe to get through them. So if I'm on a product page for a Samsung AG25 and want to go back to smart TVs, I either have to flip my phone sideways or just leave the breadcrumbs altogether.
These aren't edge cases. They are everyday barriers for millions of users.
The broken breadcrumb. Why we need to rethink a classic.
Breadcrumbs are one of those patterns that got baked into our mental model of navigation years ago.
Home greater products, greater electronics, greater smart TVs.
You've seen it everywhere, mostly just below the main navigation and before the main content. The original idea behind breadcrumbs came from desktop paradigms: wide viewports, mouse pointers, hover states. Well, none of that translates cleanly to modern mobile experiences. For many users, especially those using assistive technologies, this model doesn't hold up.
How do you get to an off-screen breadcrumb in TalkBack if you can't swipe sideways?
If a user can only see part of the path when they're zoomed in, how can they figure out the whole thing? And if the breadcrumb shrinks down to a single word or an ellipses with no other info, is it actually helping you navigate, or is it just for show?
The user's path versus the developer's path.
Here is where a lot of teams mess up. They build breadcrumbs from their data model, not from the user's mental model. Let's say a product belongs to 3 categories. If your breadcrumbs reflect the primary category by default, you are prioritizing your backend structure, not the user experience. And if you show breadcrumbs that are always the same, even if a user came from search or a promo banner, then you are building a rigid trail in a fluid, multi-entry point world. Sometimes showing breadcrumbs at all is misleading or even harmful, especially in apps where the content is flat and interconnected or filtered. There is no way to determine a parent page meaningfully.
When breadcrumbs are the answer.
There are contexts where breadcrumbs provide real value.
Hierarchical content.
Documentation sites, government portals. Here, users benefit from seeing that they are 3 levels deep and that they can go up a level if they're lost.
E-commerce filters.
You can offer breadcrumbs as filters instead. In that case, they are not breadcrumbs in the traditional sense. They are applied filters, but they serve a similar purpose: orientation and backtracking.
The spa breadcrumb problem.
Modern front-end routing often uses flat or parameterized routes.
/product/1234.
But that doesn't tell the user anything about the product's category, collection, or where it lives in the content structure. Worse, it doesn't reflect the user's mental model of the app. This leads to two main issues. One, breadcrumbs are sometimes meaningless because there is no clear hierarchy to represent. Two, breadcrumbs are misleading because they show a static path that doesn't match how the user arrives. In single-page apps, breadcrumbs are no longer simple helpers. They require intentional logic. You need to track user context, root state, and history.
The accessibility standard.
W3C's Way ARIA Authoring Practices Guide gives us a breadcrumb pattern that's clear, semantic, and focused. It uses a nav element and a list of links separated by a visual separator, often a right arrow or slash. Have in mind that some assistive tech read separators literally, so hide them from the accessibility tree and rely on list semantic instead. The last item in the breadcrumb trail should not be a link, because it represents the current page. WCAG doesn't require breadcrumbs, but it does strongly imply their value. Under Success Criteria 2.4.8, location encourages providing multiple ways for users to understand where they are. Breadcrumbs often begin at home, but not always. In dashboards, internal systems, the first crumb might be something more relevant, like My Files or Settings. What matters most isn't the label, it's whether that first crumb orients the user.
A modern solution for responsive breadcrumbs.
Let's brainstorm a clever solution using the modern tools we have at hand.
Step 1. Build from the user's real path.
The structure must reflect actual routes or hierarchies, not arbitrary UI states.
Step 2. Collapse smartly, not arbitrarily.
If space is limited, hide earlier links and replace them with a clickable ellipsis that links to the last hidden ancestor. The ellipsis is a real link, reachable by keyboard, large enough for touch, and labeled for assistive tech. Give it an ARIA label like
ARIA label equals skipped path, dashboard greater projects greater accessibility.
Step 3. Handle size dynamically.
There are modern ways using both CSS and JavaScript. For instance, with CSS only.
Breadcrumbs left brace. Display : flex semi. Flex - wrap : no wrap semi. Overflow : hidden semi. Right brace. Blank. Breadcrumbs left brace. White - space : no wrap semi. Text - overflow : ellipsis semi. Overflow : hidden semi. Min - width : fit - content semi. Right brace.
If you are targeting modern browsers, you can also combine container queries.
Breadcrumbs left brace. Container dash type colon, inline dash size semi. Right brace. Blank. At container left paren, max dash width colon, 300 px right paren, left brace. Breadcrumbs lee colon nth dash child left paren, n plus 3 right paren, colon not left paren, colon last dash child right paren, left brace. Display colon, none semi. Right brace. Blank. Breadcrumbs ellipsis left brace. Display colon, inline dash block semi. Right brace. Right brace.
For smarter collapsing, JavaScript comes in. If you want to programmatically decide how many breadcrumb items to show, you can use
Resize observer plus get bounding client rect.
This gives you exact control based on the rendered width and reacts to orientation changes or window resizes.
Step 4. Keep the end in sight.
Show the current page and recent steps. Cognitive load is lower when users see where they are now rather than where they started.
3 rules for better breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs still matter, but they need to adapt to modern interfaces. Now, what does this mean in practice? First, they need to be semantic. That means using real links. Second, they should reflect actual navigable paths, not conceptual ones. Don't fake it. Third, truncate intelligently. If you are on mobile, it's okay to drop early links, but not at the cost of usability. The user should always know where they are and be able to backtrack. And finally, don't use them as decorative elements. I've seen interfaces where what looks like a breadcrumb is actually a filter chip group. Visually it might work, but for screen reader users and keyboard-only users, this introduces cognitive load. They expect navigation, not filters.
Wrapping up.
Breadcrumbs are not decoration. They are not an afterthought. They are not just a nice extra. For people who get lost, they are a navigational lifeline. So next time you or your team drop in a breadcrumb component from a library, stop and ask.
Is this helpful? Is it truthful? Is it usable at different zoom levels, on mobile, with screen readers?
Breadcrumbs are the simplest way of guiding users through their context. Maybe just a single line of links, but one that's been a lifeline for years. Thanks for listening to Web Accessibility for All. If this episode made you rethink even a little part of your design system, subscribe, share it with your team, or drop me a message. I'd love to hear how you are making breadcrumbs better. See you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us today. Subscribe for a new challenge next week. And don't be shy. Leave us a review or ask your accessibility questions online. See you next week for another episode of Web Accessibility for All.